All right, all right. It is time. It's 7 o'clock. It's Tuesday night. It's another new year, but it is our weekly conversations with Commodores. And I know you know who's my guest tonight, Coach Sheppy. Good evening, Coach. How are you doing tonight? How's Clarksville?
Well, Clarksville's chilly with snow and more on the way, I believe, in a couple of days. I'm doing great, Bernie.
Good, good, good. I wanted to ask you, did you guys get hit with as much snow in your part of Tennessee as I saw in mid-state Tennessee and in northern Alabama? I saw several inches in those places.
No, we only had an inch here, and I failed to remember where it was, but there was a small town southeast of Nashville that they got 9 inches. Now, I don't mind snow, but I don't want 9 inches of snow.
No, Linda needs that restaurant to be open, so you guys don't need that much snow. So we're glad.
Well, we've actually been closed since the first. So we've had a little time off, and she's had some time off, so it's good.
Well, good, and I'm so glad you got some time for us tonight. And guys, if you didn't know Coach Shephard back in the day, or weren't coached by him, or part of one of his teams, you missed out. You really did, because as many years as Coach has been on the gridiron, and I hope I didn't embarrass him by stating in our promo, Coach, you realize you've been part of 6 decades of coaching football, from the 70s up until they finally let you retire for the 3rd time just a couple of years ago. That's incredible. I know you love it, but that's amazing. They keep calling you back.
Well, it was amazing coming up to go. I'll tell you right now, I would go back now, but it would have to be the right thing. I don't want to go back and teach anymore. I would go back and be an assistant coach somewhere. But I don't think anybody wants an old 71-year-old guy, trying to coach and whatnot.
Well, don't ever doubt that at all. And guys, Coach Shepard was part of Watson Brown's staff during the time that I was there, 86 to, well, you were there one more year till 90. I was there till the seasons of 89. But it really was my pleasure to be part of a team that had such unique characters, and I mean that lovingly, on the coaching staff. There was never a dull moment between Coach Christoffel, who's still at it. He's with the world champion Buccaneers, and we'll get back to him in a minute. Coach Hailstock, Coach Ross, Coach Van Holloway. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I want to put it on you, Coach. I want you to talk about what was it like being on a Watson Brown coaching staff, because I know it wasn't just Vanderbilt. You were with him beforehand, but what was it like being on his staff? What were the expectations? What was fun about it? What was terrible about it?
Terrible about it was losing, and that's not being able to do enough to get y'all to win more games. And I'm gonna tell you, I got a cheat sheet right here underneath my arms. We lost 17 games at Vanderbilt. And being with Watson was great. Went with him. Rick and I both went with him when he got the job at Austin Peay in December of '78. John Palermo, who played with Mac at Florida State and played with Dick Hopkins, Coach Hoppy at Florida State, was the defensive line coach. Louis Thompson from Alabama was the inside linebacker coach, and I was the outside linebacker coach. And we had a great staff. And we were, Bobby Martin's defensive 29, and Louis Thompson was the oldest coach on staff at 33.
Yeah.
And then Watson left and went to Vanderbilt in 81, and all of us went elsewhere. And then we got back together at Cincinnati and Rice and Vanderbilt, and it was fun. There were times where there were arguments, but one thing about it, no matter who got the maddest or who the raunchiest, when we walked out of a staff meeting, whether it was defense or it was a complete staff meeting, we're all on the same page. We could say what we felt. A lot of times Watson said what he felt, and we didn't want to hear that. He probably didn't want to hear what we said. But it was good. We were together.
Mhm. Coach, let's sidestep back to, you mentioned Cincinnati was one of the stops. And in modern time, compared to coaching back in the late 70s, early 80s, would you ever think that now that Cincinnati would have developed to the program that it had to reach the Final Four, if you will? Does it surprise you that a non-Power Five team such as Cincinnati got there?
Yes and no. Of course, we were only there a year, and we started out with a bang. We beat Penn State at Penn State,
Right.
and
Shocked the world that year.
yeah, but we only played one game at Nippert Stadium. We played our home games at Riverfront. And the one game that we played Oklahoma State the second week with Jimmy Johnson was the head coach there. And the reason we didn't play at Riverfront, they had some ceremony for some big baseball player named Bench, and they wouldn't let us play down there. That I don't know why they didn't cancel his deal that night and let us play. But Nippert Stadium was not in very good shape.
Mhm.
And the facilities had really improved. Rick and I went there when Rick was the head coach and I was under him in 2011. And we pulled up and he said, "Yep, it looks a little bit different, doesn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't mind claiming to be here now, or claiming to be here back
Yeah.
then and now." But yeah, the problem that we had was trying to convince kids to stay in town.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, everybody wants to go to Ohio State
Yeah.
because that is quote unquote East State school.
Mhm.
And but we had a good season. Our quarterback got hurt, and we had to play with two freshmen, Mike Wilgan from Moeller and Doug Rutan, I believe, from Cleveland.
Mhm.
But a lot of good kids there, a lot of young good football players. We had two guys that played in the league, a defensive end and a defensive back that played in the league for 10 or more years.
Wow. You mentioned trying to get the in-city or in-state players to come to Cincinnati. It's the same thing that Coach Lee is facing and Vanderbilt has faced for many years, convincing the talent in the Nashville metro area, which there's plenty of, to not go outside of Vanderbilt. But I know that's something that has always been a challenge to Vanderbilt from a recruiting standpoint.
Well, and the other thing is academics. I don't
Yeah.
negative toward kids. Um, we were at Rice for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
but the situation at Rice academically was the situation at Vanderbilt. We only had 30, I want to say 36 or 3,800 students at Rice, and that's graduate and undergraduate. So Vanderbilt had, I think at that time, 10,000, but they had 2,000 that applied to come in as freshmen,
Yeah.
or they brought in 2,000. They may have had 5,000 to apply. And it's different, when you add you just can't be an NCAA qualifier
Yeah.
and get into the Vanderbilts, the Duke, the Northwestern, the Stanford, the Rice. It's a little
Yeah.
bit different recruiting.
Little bit, but I want to pause you, Coach Shep. We got all kind of love for you tonight. Carl Parker, Louis Woolridge, Jeff Madden, John Denardi, all kind of folks are giving you some love.
Well, I love them too.
Coach, I can't start reading all of the comments. You're going to have to get in here and read these comments later on. But
Are they ugly?
yeah, no, none of them are ugly. They're all good. Madden says beat Penn State after they won the national championship in the opener. One of
That's
the
exactly
historic
right.
wins. I'm sure you always will remember that one.
I've got a picture right over my right shoulder right now of the scoreboard.
Awesome. Well, what an awesome day in memory. But he says the two players, George Jameson and Danny Sellers.
No, Michael, Melvin Jenkins. The
Melvin Jenkins. Okay.
Yep. See, his memory's fading, mine's not. George Jameson went to the USFL
Mm-hmm.
and played 2 years, I think, and then he Detroit. And Shake was an outside linebacker. He was a rush in for us.
Mm-hmm.
And Melvin was a corner. And I think Melvin wound up with Atlanta. I think Melvin was in there 12 or 13 years. both were great kids and great players, and both graduated. You know, they did what they came to college to do.
Well, Coach, let's pause that part of the story and let's back up to Clarksville and growing up in Clarksville. Were you from a toddler, from a little guy? Were you always a fan of all kind of sports and just playing all the time, or did somebody have to drag you out there to get you on the sports fields when you were a kid?
No, I love baseball, and there's a reason. My great uncle was the first professional athlete from Clarksville, Tennessee. He played with the Washington Senators. Well, he played with the Senators, the Reds, the A's, and the Red Sox. And he was a rookie in 1927. And he pitched against Babe Ruth. He played for the Washington Senators. And I remember these stories because I've heard them time and time again. And I took John and Gary there so they could hear them. And he struck out Babe Ruth 3 times in a game and goes in to the dressing room, to the Yankees dressing room. And when he walks out, Ruth said, "Who was that kid?" They said, "That's the guy that struck you out 3 times." And I can't say exactly what my uncle said. It was not nice. And then Babe Ruth hit his 58th home run off of my great uncle. And
tell me your great uncle's name.
Horace Lisenby.
Horace Lisenby.
They called him Hod. And to this day, I'm not certain where the name Hod came from. And Bernard, here's the thing that's ironic. He had 3 grandsons, I believe. 2 of them that I know well, Charles and Kurt Bryant. Kurt sends me a picture. Now, my great uncle was born in 1898, I think it was. 98 or 99. He was the last player born in the 18th century to play in the major.
Wow. And
Kurt sends me a picture of the I believe it was a 1922 or 1923 Clarksville High football team. He was a starting right guard. Now, you know, I'm not real smart, but he's born in the 18th century. He's playing high school football as a senior in 1923.
Was he married and have children by then and still playing high school ball?
Married and had children. But, I'm trying to figure that out. Evidently, there was no age requirement or age limit. And then he left Clarksville and went to Southwestern, which was in Memphis, and I think started playing with the Memphis Chicks, and then got into the major leagues and was off and on in the majors and the minors, and a great story. But I was a baseball player first and foremost because of him. And then we didn't have junior pro football. We had little league baseball, and we didn't even have basketball. You got in the 7th or 8th grade. Excuse me. So the former high school coach at Clarksville High, Frank Ditmore, he became the director of city recreation. And he instituted flag football in the 5th and 6th grade at every elementary school, and did the same thing in basketball. And my first football and basketball coach was Don Wood, who played 3 years of high school football, baseball, and basketball, and then goes to Austin Peay, and he's the captain of the golf team. So he was a good athlete, and
he was a great athlete. Wow.
Yeah, and still a good today. And but I played basketball. Wasn't good in football, but I really wasn't in basketball. But I enjoyed it. Enjoyed football.
And then, but you did get to play on the collegiate level. How'd you go from Clarksville to getting to play in college?
Well, I didn't sign out of high school. And my high school coach, Johnny Miller, wanted me to go to Castle Heights. And I just could not see myself putting on that military uniform, every day. Yeah. And so I walked on at Austin Peay. And we had 2 guys that signed with Austin Peay. Carney signed with Vanderbilt. Joe Balthup signed at Tennessee and started 3 years. Gary Mason was going to go to Georgia Tech. Sykes went to Western Kentucky. Johnny Golden went to Austin Peay, and I walked on it. At the end of my freshman year, I got half a scholarship. And I thought that's the greatest thing in the world. Then after my sophomore year, I got a full scholarship. So that's why I was there. And then during the summer, I was still playing American Legion baseball, and I got some, I guess the coach felt sorry for me, some most valuable player in the league award. And the baseball coach asked me to come out for baseball at Austin Peay. And I said, well, you got to talk to Coach Dukes and see if he'll let me. And it was 2 days later, and Linda, well, we were dating at the time, and Linda was in his class, and he said, well, I talked to Coach Dukes, give up a full football scholarship for a possibility of a possible baseball scholarship, then go ahead. And I'm thinking, I ain't real smart, but I don't think I'm going to give up a full ride for a chance to have a partial baseball. And I love both sports, and I coached both sports. When I started back coaching in high school in Savannah, Georgia in 73.
Guys, I'm talking with Coach Gary Shephard, and we're leaving Clarksville. We're headed to Austin Peay. We're about to get into the high school and collegiate coaching, and Coach OJ Fleming has joined us, as he always does on Tuesdays. OJ, Happy New Year to you and all the other Commodores who are out there watching us tonight. And I just, as a side note, I so enjoy doing these conversations each week, because not only do I get to rekindle friendships with coaches and players from the days that I was on campus, but I'm meeting Commodores from all decades. And what's so cool, Coach, and I want you to tell me if this resonates with you. Different players, you play at different decades, but we have a lot of common experiences, whether we played in our lovely stadium over my shoulder here, or suffered through whatever McGugan offered at the time that you were there. It's not going to be anything like it's going to be in the next couple of years. I know we all can't wait for that. But one of the things that I have found really neat in the last 2 years doing these, Coach, is that most everybody lived in Carmichael Towers. Most everybody ate that crappy Gaddy's pizza down the street, or road trips where we had issues, those kind of things. So my question to you is, Coach, I know you've talked to other coaches who coached with you at the same time at Vanderbilt. You've probably along the way met other coaches or former players who've coached at Vanderbilt. Do you ever feel that there's some kind of a common bond between the coaches who once coached where you coached? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Bernard, there is a bond, and the bond is this: all of us went to Vanderbilt believing that we could be the staff that changed things, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. Now I'm gonna tell you a story. When we fly into Nashville, we meet with Coach Kramer, and we have lunch down at a restaurant office building. They cater in lunch. I'm not going to say who it was, but there was a big Vanderbilt booster, and he told us that if we win 6 games, he would take us to Augusta to play golf. Well, we were next to each other, kind of elbowed and kicked under the table. We're going to go to Master. We didn't know he meant 6 games in a year. We won 10 in 5 years, and he never did take us. So Rick and I always have to laugh about that. But, Vanderbilt is a great school. Vanderbilt will win, but they have to have a ton of support from the top. And from what I read and heard, I think they have that now. I think they have someone that's wanting to do everything that they can possibly do to make all sports have the success that baseball had here recently.
Yeah.
But it's we all, when we get together, we talk about, well, if we'd have done this, if we'd have done that. Like I said, there were 17 games that we lost. One that I think the first one, I think, just absolutely killed us with your sophomore year. We're up at the big house up east. We're up 28-7, and Rodney Barrett takes the opening second half kickoff and takes it back past midfield, I believe, 38-36.
Yeah.
You know, just games like that.
Yeah.
1 point here, 2 points there, just so close, and we just could not get y'all over the hump.
Yeah.
And that's something I think that each and every one of us that coached it.
You know, Coach, that particular game, the 38-36 loss in Knoxville, I can remember working on the scout team on a particular type of a screen. Jeff Francis, I think, was their quarterback. And you guys were working with Billy Cunningham and the other guys about a particular play. Look for this, look for that. And what was run in practice occurred in the game. And if I remember correctly, Billy took an interception back to the house.
That's it.
And I'm thinking, I'm watching the play. Oh, here's Billy, and he does it. And it's like, man, that's why you practice these things. That's why you read and watch film, and it worked. But when they started their comeback, we just couldn't contain it. They just had too much in the tank.
And I'm sorry. And then, you know, in the 88 game, we're playing there, and I think that was Billy's junior or senior year. That may have been his senior year. And we were going to do a fake punt, and the fake punt had to be between 40-yard lines. We were going to run him. We were keeping him on the sideline, and we were going to run him on the field. And there was nothing that said you had to be, you know, inside the numbers or whatever.
Right.
Tennessee never had a corner or a defensive back looking at our sideline. It came down time to punt. Till that night or that afternoon. And I'm looking around, I'm thinking, I mean, we worked on this thing. You know, that was always student holiday that week. It was always the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
That's right.
And we found out that there were some people that had stayed and requested a room on the top floor of the Holiday Inn. And I'm thinking, gum, they skunked us.
You know, as good as Dwayne and Luke were about finding out those things, they couldn't cover everything.
Exactly.
But, I want to welcome Gerald Collins has joined us. So Gerald was a guest a few weeks back. And
good linebacker.
Oh, great
Excellent.
Linebacker and even better man. And enjoyed my conversation with him. Guys, I'm talking with Coach Gary Shephard. He was coaching the linebackers, outside linebackers, among other things, tight ends and other positions in the 80s for Vanderbilt on Watson Brown's staff. But now he is 3 times retired, most recently 2017 from the gridiron. He is very much active. I want to talk about Edwards Steakhouse for a minute in Clarksville. Raise your hand if you've been there. Raise your hand twice if you need to get there. And Coach, how far are you approximately from campus, from Vanderbilt's campus? Because I don't want to hear these excuses about too far to drive to go get a steak with Coach Shephard.
Well, if you come the interstate, you take your life in your hands, Coach. There's not a whole lot of times that you can come down 24 to Clarksville and not be a wreck, but you can always go old 41A. And from where Carmichael Towers stood to Edwards Steakhouse at 107 Franklin Street is probably 45 or 46 miles.
Do y'all hear that? That's an hour. That's even national traffic. That's less than an hour to go from campus to Steakhouse. What's the best thing on Linda's menu?
My favorite's the filet. And I'll tell you something. If everybody wants to check us out, go to edwardssteakhouse.net. Our steaks are named after our parents, our children, and our grandchildren. And the filet is Sarah's filet, and Edward was my dad. And then we have the ribeyes and strips and 6-ounce sirloins and 12-ounce sirloins. And Gary, this is a big story. Gary calls me I think he's living in Mount Jew at that time. And he said, "Hey, um, have y'all got a menu yet? If you and John and Mom come up," I said, "Yes, well, send it to me." I said, "John, send your brother the menu." So he sends it. Gary calls him back and said, "Hey, what the heck are y'all doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, they call my mom and dad, Linda's mom and dad, Granny and Granddaddy Fulton." He said, "Me, Mom, Peepaw's got a steak. Granny and Granddaddy Fulton's got a steak. John's got a steak." And when we first left Clarksville, went to Savannah, Georgia, Gary was called Gary Boy, G-Bo by everybody.
Mhm.
He said, "Dad, what does Gary Boy have?" And I said, "Well, what does Gary Boy want?" He said, "Hamburger steak." I said, "You got it. And that's the only thing you can ever order on the menu and get free. Everything else you pay for."
That's
But,
great.
but, and then John's two kids are Jet and Aspen. And so we have Jet's duet, which is 2 6-ounce sirloins, and Aspen is a 6-ounce sirloin, a single one. And Caleb is Gary's oldest son, and he's got I believe it's the bone-in rib. No, it's boneless ribeye. And then Ryan, which is Gary's youngest son,
Uh-huh.
has got the brisket platter. Guess
Oh,
who does not have one cotton? Linda's got
the guy
Linda's
wearing the
son,
Titans hat.
the guy wearing the Titans hat, exactly.
Now, Coach Christy Houck just asked whether the burnt ends, the gristle that you don't serve, is that named after Dwayne or Luke? Which
Kelly.
that's even better.
And let me tell you this. Here's a good story. John Shepard leaves us and goes to work at another place closer to his home. And he and I sat on the bench. Frank Sutton, Sergeant Carter, is from Clarksville. And there's a statue right out in front of our restaurant. So John says, "Dad, I need to talk to you sometime about this job that I'm looking at." Okay. So we go out and sit on the bench, and he's telling me about it, and I'm asking him questions. And he said, "Well, Dad, if y'all can pay me $50,000 more, I'll stay." Bubba, I wish you luck. That ain't happening. And he has a resume, and Christy Howe sees it and contacts John. I think this was in July of 2020. And he's talking to Christy, and John says, "Mr. Christy, can I ask you?" He said, "Yes." He said, were you the one that found the Christy cookies?" And, Christy said, "Well, yes, and something else." I said, "Well, you may know my dad." And he said, "Well, who's your dad?" And he said, "Gary Shephard." And so they agreed to meet the next day. And Christy comes in and Christy, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, Christy comes in where they met and laid down a 1990 press guide. He looks at John and looks at the press guide, and he said, "You look a little bit different." Christy, I wasn't but 11 years old. John has worked for Christy Houck since, I guess, the 1st of August. Absolutely love the man to death. I'm not saying that because it's anything other than the truth. And Christy and Doug Matthews, Christy's wife, Melissa, Rex Raines, and I think Winston Evans came down, eat at our restaurant. And I brought John Carney, who was a captain 2 years after Christy was a captain in 91. In 69, John was in 71. He sat there for about 2 hours and talked and had I hope we had a great meal. But
and about half the stories were probably true.
Matthews may have embellished a few of them. I think the rest of them tell the truth.
Well, Coach, let me ask you. You coached obviously for many years on the high school level at different times, at the beginning of your career and at the end of your third career or your third stint. But in the middle, you coached on the collegiate level. And obviously there's a big differences because you've got teenage boys on one, you've got growing into men in theory in college. So I guess I gotta start here. Which, if anything, did you prefer, the collegiate level or the high school level, or did it make a difference to you from a coaching standpoint?
Well, early on, the high school level was where I needed to be. Um, and I started out coaching defensive backs and linebackers. I never played a lick of defense at all, ever. So I spent going to clinics and doing that. Then when I got in college, I never coached offense, but the one year that I coached the tight ends at Vanderbilt, and they're both different. Rick and I have talked about this at length. We always say that we came along 20 or 25 years too soon. Now, it's not so for him now because he's making a little bit more. Yeah. But the most money I ever made coaching in college was $45,000. Not in Denver. That was under Rick at Austin. The season of 2012. My last year teaching in high school, 2016-17, I made $71,000. So it's I enjoyed both. The only thing I would have changed, one game in particular in high school, the only thing I would have changed was hopefully finding a way for us to win more games. One game in high school was our senior year, and we were playing for state championship, and Watson talked to me and wished me good luck and everything. And we had an idiot for an offensive coordinator that changed the play. And we fumbled that play, and had we not changed it, John probably would have scored a bootleg. But this idiot guy calling the plays changed the play, so we lost it. He's wearing a Titan hat. Matter.
Well, Coach, I know that I've heard so often that the losses stick with us longer than the wins sometimes, or they hurt more, of course. But do you actually learn more from the games you don't win compared to the games that you do win? And I don't know if that's an easy question to answer. They certainly stick around in your memory bank pretty long. But do you learn more from losses than you do from wins?
Well, here's the thing, and I've said this since day one, and I popularized this from the guy that hired me the first time in Savannah, Georgia. Coaches don't win games. Coaches lose games. Players win games. And the thing that sticks in your mind, and just like that play that I described about John, we ran mirror. That was the formation we ran. I know you remember that, two splits and two slots. And we were going to run a buck sweep to the left, which was called 47. And I remember to this day, I hit my arm and flashed 23. John looks at the wristband, and 23 would play 46, 47. And I pointed to him. Well, he knew that anytime I pointed to him, fake it and take off. Don't tell anybody else. So I called right mirror, which was a fist, and I'm looking like, and I hit my wrist and flashed up number 23, and he looked at it and looks up at me, and I'm pointing at him. He points back at himself, and I did this. And we were on the 6-yard line going in. Big John Henderson was a defensive end, and our best tailback had 7 in practice. The next best tailback was now the best tailback, and we had to put another guy in his place. And then we had the third tailback got hurt at half. And so we had a choice of putting 100 sophomore in, or putting in a guy who had been a tight end slot back for us that weighed 190, and we put him in. And he didn't make a good block, and he stripped the ball from our running back. Just had leg record at Tennessee State University.
Mhm.
And had we run the naked play with John and changed, it was on the 6-yard line. They're not going to pinch right here. They did.
Mhm.
And had we not changed it, we'd won 21-18 instead of losing 18-4. So everything like that,
Yeah.
we go back to the game at Tennessee that we talked about earlier, 38-36. Tennessee called back-to-back timeouts. Back in those days, you could not call back-to-back timeouts, but we're playing in Knoxville, and somehow that gets overlooked. But if you remember, I believe Carl scores a touchdown because it was 38-28, and we'll score a touchdown, go for 2, and onside kick it. And we've got a guy standing there to receive the onside kick, and we have a defensive player that does not make a block.
Mhm.
And I think back, how many times do we work? How many times did we actually go and talk about that?
Yeah.
And we didn't do it enough,
Mhm.
because if we'd have done it enough, so it wasn't the fact that the players lost the game, is the fact
Yeah.
special
You know,
teams coordinator didn't do it enough for him to know what to do.
but
And that was me.
you look back on those specific plays, the end of the state championship game, the play that didn't go the way that you would hoped it to go. But frankly, leading all the way up to that very play, that whole season, you guys did a heck of a lot of right, and things did go right up to that play. And I know it's easy to just focus on that last very play, but to get to the state championship, I think speaks volumes for you and the team and what you guys did accomplish that year. But as much as you may carry that burden from that one play, you've also got a whole team of guys who played for you that got to play in the state championship game when many high school kids never get to play in that game. And I know that doesn't take away the sting of it. I know that, but you got there, and not many coaches can say that they got there. But I
Well,
can tell you, Coach, one thing before you hit on that, want to welcome, and you need to watch your P's and Q's. Beverly Brothers is in the house watching this.
he's been
So
to the restaurant, I believe, 2 or 3 times.
So any of those stories that we were about to get into, just keep that in mind.
Well, we're not going to talk about the 40th birthday celebration of Watson.
We've touched on that with 3 other people, but to the extent that you want to share your version of it, Coach, we're all ears.
Well, I'll just say that it was we were in the new facility, and it was April of 1990 when he turned 40 and I turned 40 in October. And I don't know if it was Beverly, Edwina. I don't know who it was that came up with the idea, but I told him to please do this for my 40th in October. Didn't do it. It was we always had a lot of
fun. And that's where we're going, because as CP Carl Parker just says, he wants some behind the scenes stories that hadn't made the newspaper or the rounds. Now, here's where I want to go, Coach Shep. Where was your recruiting territory your years at Vanderbilt? Where did you have responsibilities?
I had the eastern half of Atlanta and South Georgia. Rick had North Georgia and the western half of it. Then I had Panhandle. So everything from Jacksonville to Pensacola.
So what you're saying is you were partly responsible for Wally and John Newman both signing with Vanderbilt in '86.
Yep.
And
John Newman had a teammate
Clarkston Hines.
Well, he was much younger.
Oh,
He was much younger. Well, he had a baseball teammate that pretty good.
yeah,
Jones or something, some Jones
yeah,
kid, Sheppard Jones.
maybe a Hall of Famer, number 10 for the Braves. He was pretty
But
decent player.
I'm trying to think. I want to say it was E.A. Groves, and he signed with Georgia Tech. I'll tell you, of all the people and or tried to recruit. Now, when we first went to Vanderbilt, I had Tampa, and we had 3 or 4 kids that I really thought we had a shot at getting. And every time that we went against Coach Curry at Georgia Tech, we never. It just we could not beat him in recruiting what he was. But yeah, we signed Wally, we signed John, signed Gabe Watley out of Stone Mountain, and a bunch of other kids that we were in on. I was actually in on EJ when he was at Southwest DeKalb, and didn't he go somewhere? Did he sign with Vanderbilt? I thought he went to
Signed with
Northwestern.
Northwestern.
Okay, that's what I
He
thought.
and his teammate, his buddy, they ended up at Northwestern, and then he transferred.
Yeah, but it was tough, and it's tough on Coach Lee right now.
Yeah,
because everybody's going to say, well, Vanderbilt can't win, and the only person that's won there is James Franklin, and he used that to build a pin. Well, hey, that's okay, but it's tough because you have to have great academic. I'll tell you right now, there's 3 things that I always talk to kids about. Even when I was at wherever I was, Austin P, Elon College, wherever, you got to look at 3 things when you pick a school, and you got to put them in the order of what you think is most important: academics, athletics, and a social life. And I would always say, hey, if you put a social life number 1, you ain't gonna be with us very long. I hope during the day that academics is number 1.
Yeah.
And at 2:00 when we had individual meetings or staff team meetings or whatever, and until about 6:00 football.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's got to be. But, it wasn't from a lack of us trying, and it certainly was not a lack you and your teammates trying, because we all wanted to win in the world.
Coach Mark Bradley had the state of Alabama and maybe some territory. He recruited me and Stump Johnson and Thor Erickson and guys from our state. But he used to tell us that during the recruiting season, because he was in the car so much, so late at night, to stay awake, he would drink his sodas and eat his chicken nuggets or whatever. And then during the season, he'd be able to exercise and get that weight back off. So it was kind of a up and down for him. And did you and Coach Christophel, when you left out of Vanderbilt, headed to Georgia, were you all together in a car and then split ways, or were you all separate because you had different territories? I mean, I'm assuming you were in the car quite a bit in that part of the state.
Well, if you remember, most of the time, halfway through practice on Thursday, or at least as soon as practice ended, we're hauling butt to the airport and flying out. And my other recruiting area was Coach Mentooth and I split up Dallas. I had Dallas all the way over to LD Bell High School, which was about halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth, and Greg had the other part of the metroplex. So, we were going there, and then Watson said, well, can you take some junior colleges in Kansas? And I said, sure. I said, what about, I got a card back from Hawaii one time. I said, Coach, I think I need to go out here and check this kid out. He said, where Honolulu? It almost couldn't say it without laughing. He said, just get some film on it first and we'll decide what we're going to do. But, we covered, we had the country covered, and Watson's thing was, go into every possible high school you can. And I'm serious, in the springtime, we would hit 6 high schools in a day and 2 to 3 practices afterwards.
Wow.
And Watson's thing was always to me was, Sheppy, where are you going this week? Well, I'm going to Dallas. Okay. Are you going to be there all week? Yep, I'll be there all week. How many days you going to play golf? I said 2. You know, and then he'd say, go to Jordan and the Panhandle, because, you know, like we lived in Savannah. And he'd say, is there anybody to recruit in Savannah? I said, yeah. I said, there's always somebody to recruit in Savannah. How many days you going to play golf? 2. But, you know, it was like going to play golf at 7:15 at night, you know, in the deep south, you can do
Yeah.
9:30. And it was a joy. I tell you what, I missed seeing John and Gary play baseball in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Always called at night, asking how they did, how many hits they get, how many errors they make, blah blah blah. And as soon as I could get a flight out on Friday, I never stayed and watched a practice on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to get home. And one time I left on in the middle of May and was gone 18 days and didn't come in on the week.
Wow.
And I'll never do that again. So
I was going to say,
went
Coach,
on.
when you decide to be not just a high school coach, but later on a college coach, it takes a toll on you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, because like you said, you're gone for so many days. I know with modern technology, it's easier to FaceTime and see, but nothing I suspect would replace actually being there. I get that. But here's what I think is such a beautiful thing about the Steakhouse. Everybody's there, or they show up. And I know that brings it. You got a big smile now. I know that you see folks walking in the door. That's got to bring a big smile to your face.
But here's the thing. I'm really discouraged from coming down there when we have customers, because I do what I do best and sit down and BS with them. Linda walk back, you can't be sitting in the aisle. People can't get by. And I'm thinking, oh, walk on the other aisle.
She needs you in the back. You need to be scrubbing.
Well, I tell you, here's my job. This is my job title. I wash tablecloths and napkins, because we have tablecloths and napkins.
Mm-hmm.
I take out the trash. I roll silverware Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night.
Mm.
And I mop the floors, I mop the bathrooms and the service station.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll call me, and if you were to come in and I didn't know it, she would call me and say, Sheppy, Bernard Nomberg, we live 2 miles away, so I'm there in 7 minutes if I hit all green light.
Sure.
And but you know, it's I just had a young man, well, he's a player of mine from Rice University that called me. He's from Ladd, Illinois. He drove to Clarksville to see me. We had dinner and we sat in the bar. And I was on a diet, and I'm still on it. I'm back on it now, seriously. He looks at me and says, Coach, can I order a beer? I said, sure, you're 21, aren't you? He said, I was 21 in college. I said, okay, what do you want? He said, Yingling. I said, bring Joe a Yingling. And so I bought his dinner. I didn't write it off. I bought it. Yeah. And I told him, I said, oh, you're paying for your own beer. He said, okay. I looked back there and I said, he went to the bathroom. I said, how much is this total tab? And they told me, and I said, I'll pay for everything. Here's a $20 tip. So he comes back, he says, Coach, I got to pay for my beer. And I said, no, I'll pay for it. So I'll tell you and any other Vanderbilt people, you come, I'm not paying for your food, because I'm afraid about 15 of you will come in one time, and I will buy 1 round of beer for sure. And you can have a beer with the old coach. And I didn't drink a beer with him. In fact, I have not had a beer since June 23rd.
Wow.
I know Coors Light's pissed off.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Bad at me
I was going to say that your usual order probably for the restaurant's gone down a little bit.
Well, other people have picked up the pace, though.
is it true there are photos floating around the internet of you wearing a hairnet while you're rolling the silverware? Or did I
No,
just create
tell
that?
tell Dwayne Jones that is not a true statement.
Well,
No,
guys, I think it would be an awesome time if we could figure out post-COVID, if that ever ends, we come up for a Vandy Boys baseball game weekend and we make us a side trip up to Clarksville.
And Dwayne knows this, and Beverly knows this because Beverly came down, sung there was an assistant trainer under Wig at Vanderbilt.
Mhm.
Beverly came down with Tom and his wife, and I think they made a reservation like 3 or 4 days ahead of time. If people want to come, would love for them to come. Would love to see them. But please call and make a reservation. And we were open 3 days. Excuse me. We were open 4 days between Christmas and New Year's.
Mhm.
4 days.
Say that you went out, Coach. How many people? 4 days?
In 4 days, we had 400.
Wow. That's
And I mean,
phenomenal.
and 2019 was our best year ever, and we eclipsed that about December the 7th or 8th, somewhere in there. So knock on wood, Linda's doing a heck of a job.
She sure is. And wow. Coach, before I let you get out of here, I want to talk about the modern game for a few minutes. I know you and I briefly have talked about that you're not a fan, as many are not a fan of the current transfer portal and the current NIL deals. And I want to pause that because I know you and I could talk about that for an hour. But here's what I want to ask you. I know you still watch the game and follow it pretty closely. What do you like about the current collegiate game that you see? Of course, every generation, the players are bigger, faster, stronger. And high schools are now doing what they were doing 20 years ago in college. I get that. But what do you like about the current collegiate game that you see?
I love the RPO stuff. It's a different way to run the option, and the option is the greatest equalizer in the world.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't good, you wouldn't see the NFL doing it. I mean, your Lamar Jacksons, your everybody has something. Well, I wouldn't say Roth, number 7 from Pittsburgh. I don't think he's doing any RPOs.
No,
But
you'll never see him.
yeah, most of your NFL quarterbacks are doing some type of it now.
Mhm.
They may be getting rid of it instead of running it downhill. But I'm telling you, well, you go back to now. This is my era. Jack Mildren was a quarterback at Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Scott Frost, quarterback at Nebraska.
Mhm.
On the NFL, Eric Crouch. They played
Yeah.
defensive back or wide receiver. They play quarterback
Yeah.
because the NFL wasn't going to do anything like that. Here's a great story. Me, Big Mantooth, Coach Hopkins, and Mike Nolan, whose dad was a coach of the 49ers. Mike was with the 49ers.
Mhm.
I was with Dan Reeves. He'd go and visit the Dallas Cowboys and wear it right. And Ernie Stautner, defensive coordinator, he's talking about flex 4-3 defense and all that sort of thing. Of course, we didn't have a Randy White to play that front, but that's what we were trying to do.
Mhm.
And he said, well, how would you stop triple option?
Mhm.
And Bernard, he could not draw the triple option on the board. He did not know what they were doing because he had been a big NFL player and had been a coach for so long. He did not understand what the triple option was.
Yeah.
And it was weird, but I really like the RPO stuff they're doing now.
Yeah.
I'll say this: there are players that played years ago in the NFL, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, didn't play in today
Mhm.
because just what that bigger, faster.
Yeah. I mean, could you?
Kids in high school that are getting tutored by strength coaches and agility coaches and doing all those sort of things.
Mhm.
I'm not. I have mixed emotions about that, because where do you tell a kid, well, you can go get trained by this guy, but this other family doesn't have the means of doing that, the transportation to get him there or the money to pay for it. How do you tell them, no, you got to be in our program?
Yeah. It does. It continues to separate the haves and the have-nots. I certainly respect that. Dante Ferguson says to tell you hello, Coach.
See who all joined in, and I appreciate them joining in, and wish I could see them.
Well, Coach, when we get off, you certainly can go see all. There's a ton of comments for you to address here. And as we wrap up, Coach, and I've so enjoyed catching up with you, and I appreciate the time that when Linda does let you out for a little bit, you jump on when Dwayne reminds you that we have these on Tuesday nights. But guys, I don't know, for those of you who didn't or weren't on the teams in 86 to 90, every once in a while the coaches would tell jokes, and you had Coach Hopkins with the skiing. You had Coach Mantooth with his awesome joke.
You want to shout out?
Oh my gosh, it's one of the funniest ever. But even now, 35 years later, it still brings a big smile. And that was one of the things. We didn't win a lot of games, but there was some fun there to be had amongst all the hard work. So that's what I appreciate about the coaches during that time period.
Well, do you remember that if you had a birthday in the fall, you had to run? You remember how we used to run quarters or fifths?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Rick and I's birthday was in October.
Mm-hmm.
Mine's the 18th. His is 27th. And Watson said, y'all got to run a lap. And I'm looking around. I'm thinking, God, and I had to be coaching the linebackers at that time. So I've got Bond and Summers and Weingarten, all them people. And I'm thinking, so he said, okay, ready. And I took off right then. I left. Didn't want to be the last one. But when he did it right, you had to do the number of push-ups that was relative to your age.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to do this in 85 and had to do 35 push-ups.
Right.
And I did it. But it was a struggle. I don't think I could do 5 right now, but
I suspect you could, Coach. Coach, I appreciate your time, and it was so fun catching up with you tonight. Thank you for sharing some time with us.
I'm going to tell you, appreciate you asking. Like a guy said to me about 2 months ago, he said, Sheppy, we've been friends 55 years. And I said, yes. He said, there's a lot more days behind us than we got in front of. Just hope the front few days last a whole lot more. Enjoyed this. I hope I can remember to you watch it. And I'll be honest with you, I was scared to death that I would forget tonight. I have notes. I've got a note on my calendar. I've got 2 notes over here to my left. I've got a note over here. Don't forget Bernie's show. And Linda and I went somewhere this afternoon. And now, what time are you on? At 7 o'clock. What time do you need to be back home? I said 5:30. She said, well, we'll leave at 5:30. I said, okay, we'll get home at 6. So she's not here. She's down at the restaurant. And we came by, and I locked up. Well, I didn't lock up. I turned the outside lights on. I go back in the truck, and I said, hey, you got 15 messages. And she said, well, while you're on the radio, then I'll come down here. And she calls every single one and leaves a message. And and tells them, hey, I've got your reservation for tonight. 8 o'clock for 6 people. She's just that way. And she and John are really the reason why Edwards Steakhouse has been successful. Plus, we've got a great staff, people that our chef has been with us in April.
Wow.
And or maybe, no, it'd be 11 years in April. I'm sorry. And we've got servers that's been with us 3 or 4 years. The only thing that I'm good at is washing tablecloths and napkins and rolling stuff and taking out the trash and mopping the floor. Well,
Guys, go see Coach Edward Steakhouse in Clarksville. Thank
Come
you,
see us.
Coach. We'll see you
We'd
again
love to
next
see you.
week. Y'all have a good week.
Love y'all.